let's see, I had Joe Testament. He was by this point, when I first saw him, I think he was about 7 months old. And then I had to go back and finish out my tour of duty with the SEALs. Mm. That's a couple more months yet. And then by the time I finally got to Burt's and started home, my brother, in fact, met me at Burt's. We all met at Burt's. Mm. And that's where he gave us a handful of dogs, for me doing the favor, the Johnny Walker Red dog, thing. Mm. He just literally gave me, I had already bought one little bitch from him. I told you about that, but he gave me like 3. I think I left there with about 5 dogs total. Mm. And then my brother had a couple from a guy named Jerry Clemens over in Huntsville, Texas. And we set up shop. We started, developing our yard and, going towards our goal. And we ran hard and heavy from then until now, even that. But there's a lot of things that have happened between then and now. And I mean, some good, some bad, some not so fun, and some a lot of fun, but it's been a long road. But the one thing I can say about it, I love the pit bulls, American Pit Bull Terriers, as much now as I loved them the first day I saw one. And the first day I wanted one, I knew I wanted one even before I ever saw one. Mm. And my brother felt the same way. So we're definitely sold out Pit Bull Terrier guys. No doubt about that.
Mm. Throughout the years, what were some of your favorite dogs, your pride and joy dogs over the years?
Well, of course, we brought Joe Testament home, and he was a great champion and a great producer. And he never got the recognition that he really deserved, because he was just a talented, very, very talented, very smart, very, very game. Just in every way, it would have been a champion on anybody's yard. Mm. And we bred him to Crazy Blondie too, and got a dog named Uncle Bud. We made a champion out of him, champion Uncle Bud. He wound up going register merit and register merit. He's also a Hall of Fame dog. Mm. And so that was champion Uncle Bud. And then I had a litter-mate brother to champion Uncle Bud. His name was Crazy Horse, a viper. A viper bit him and killed him before I could, take him any further. But it turned out he was actually better. He was a better dog than Uncle Bud was. But I lost him from a snake. I've lost a lot of dogs from snake bites. But, so I went back to Arizona and I got Johnny Walker Red. And I brought him home, and we bred him quite a bit. And he figures into a lot of the pedigrees that I'm even running now, the stuff that I run now. Well, Johnny Walker Red figures in all those pedigrees. Mm. So those are 3: Joe Testament, champion Joe Testament, champion Uncle Bud, champion Johnny Walker Red, Crazy Horse. And then we had another dog named Tex we got from Burt, that had gotten the dog from Maurice Carver. And he was actually a grandson of Carver's Cracker and Carver's Judy, which you probably wouldn't make sense of that. But people that are in the know of those days, that was early 80s, owning a grandson of Carver's Cracker and Carver's Judy, probably some of the best blood that ever looked through a collar from Maurice Carver. Mm-hmm. We got the dog from Burt. We bred him quite a bit, and he wound up producing a dog that went to Croatia. And he's at this point, his name was Golden Kings Champion Silver. Mm-hmm. And he is a result of mine and my brother's breeding. Uncle Bud and the Tex dog that we got from Burt by way of Maurice Carver. Mm-hmm. And we bred him and got a pup and sent him to Croatia. And the dog went on to be the ADBA. He was literally the number one seed dog in all of Eastern Europe to this day. He's the very foundation of American Pit Bull Terriers in all of Eastern Europe. But anyway, there's so many dogs that came through my hands that I bred. And that was another part that really probably sticks in my craw, mostly about Burt Sarles and Joni Sarles. At the time, her name was Joni Sarles. She was married to Burt. And when we had our split, I guess it was with Burt near 20 years. And me and my brother were handling and conditioning dogs for Burt and with Burt and Joni. We were all what I would consider partners, because they say, oh, we weren't partners. But what do you call it when you're living in a house that belonged to me and not paying rent? And I've got at least half the dogs in the kennel are mine. And Burt's selling those dogs to pay for the dog food bills, and yet you're going to say that you're not a partner. I'm not a partner. That's bullshit. But anyway, when we split with us, what happened was they got jealous because me and my brother were making a name, and all eyes were glued on me and my brother, and I think we were taking the spotlight off Burt. Burt couldn't handle it. After a while, I don't know if it was Burt or Joni that couldn't handle it, or both of them. They just figured out a way to get rid of us and send us down the road, and that was just Burt's way. The problem with Burt is he never could. It didn't matter how good of a friend you were to him. He was never your friend. You could always be his friend, but he was never going to be your friend. He was the type of guy who had a very cold kind of a disposition towards friendship or any kind of nostalgia or old, how you treat an old friend, or how you deal with an old buddy that that you've known since childhood, that type of thing. Right. No matter how much stuff you've been through with them, they still have a cold outlook on it, and there's nothing warm and no strong bond there that should have been there that wasn't. So Burt was that type of guy, and I think Joni was that type of woman, because Joni, she always impressed me as a woman that never liked men. And I'm not saying she was a lesbian or anything. She never liked men. She didn't like Burt. She and Burt had a marriage of convenience. It was no love, no amorous. There's nothing kind and sweet and gentle in that marriage. It was strictly business. And Joni did the work and Burt did the sales. And it was a team effort, and they did it. And we were in part of the team, me and my brother. But anyway, when they finally split us up, understanding the way the ADBA was, the ADBA is American Dog Breeders Association, and they're the only ones that really recognize American Pit Bull Terriers. And the guy that owned that company or a group, and it's still going today, and his children run it, his name was Ralph Greenwood. And now Ralph died years ago, but his daughters and his sons took the ADBA over, and it's still going today. But anyway, they register Pit Bull Terriers, American Pit Bull Terriers, and it's called the ADBA, the American Dog Breeders Association. It's probably the gold standard for registering American Pit Bull Terriers.
Yeah, I prefer the ADBA as opposed to others.
Yeah, well, anyway, the bottom line was Burt and Ralph being the president and the owner of the ADBA, and Burt helping Ralph some 20 years before that stand the ADBA up, because ADBA was in the tank and Ralph bought it from a guy that was kind of like not taking care of the program. It was a business that was failing, and Ralph Greenwood bought it. And he got with Burt because he knew Burt had a lot of data, a lot of paperwork. Back in those days, this is way pre-computer days, And they had everything. All you had was paper, So, and Burt had stacks and filing cabinets of paper. And when I say paper, I'm talking about dogs' pedigrees through the years, from way back before World War II. Way back, like in the in the Depression era, 20s, 30s, 40s, all the way to the present time.
Wow.
So Burt had a lot of sway with the ADBA, and so did Joni. Joni kind of grew up under Ralph Greenwood's hand. She wasn't an orphan, but she wants to act like she was an orphan. She was not. But she came hanging around Amy. She and Amy, I should say, Greenwood were pals. And Amy and her sister, Patty, they were Greenwoods, and then Joni. And anyway, Joni went to live with Ralph Greenwood, in his family. She just kind of lived there. I don't know how long, several years. She kind of grew up, with Ralph. So not only was Burt best friends with Ralph, Joni had kind of grown up under his, like he was her second dad, But she was an orphan, only self-appointed orphan. I mean, she had a mother and father in New York. I mean, they had not abandoned her. She ran away or left or just, she was a rebellious female. And she didn't like men. But anyway, long story short, all the pedigrees that mentioned, and see, this is something I would really like to come out. I had developed, when I came home from Burt's, and I had a little Champion Joe Testament, and I got Johnny Walker Red, and we had the Sarles Tex dog, or Madden Skips, I should say Madden Skips Tex from Maurice Carver. We had bought a handful more dogs from Burt. We probably bought 10 or 12 more dogs from Burt, and we went to breed them, and we bred them connected, with all each other, and we had our own family of dogs going based on what we had gotten from Burt. And we had them all registered with the ADBA, our names. Madden Skip. My name is Madison. I went under the name Mad or Mad Dog, and my brother's name was Skip, and so it's Madden Skips Champion Joe Testament, Madden Skips Champion Uncle Bud, Madden Skips Champion Johnny Walker Red. And of all the dogs, and like I say, when Burt and Joni came from Arizona, they left Arizona because of the trouble, and they came to Florida. They moved into my home. They literally moved in to my house, not just my home, but my property, everything. It was my house. It was 80 acres. It was in Ponce de Leon, Florida. And they moved from Marana, Arizona to Ponce de Leon, Florida to my house. And 15 years after that, when we had been running hot and heavy and very strong and making a name and really put Burt Sarles' name on the map on the East Coast. Before that, see, Burt was well known on the West Coast, but in the East, there wasn't nobody knew who Burt was, until he moved to Ponce de Leon, which by the time he did that was 10 years. Me and my brothers were veterans by that time. We weren't no newcomers. We had been in the game 10 years, and we'd already made a name for ourselves. So, like I say, we were feeding about 60, 70 head of dogs when Burt showed up. And Burt had about 40, and we had near 60. And so, all total, we were feeding close to 100 head of dogs. And when Burt split up, what happened is he left after about 6 years. He was living in my house, in my property. It was 80 acres. He bought him a piece of land up the road, only a few miles, just a mile or two up the road. And when he moved all the dogs up there, I got a little nervous about it, but I didn't think much of it. But, it was within a couple of years, Burt and Joni ran us off. And they knew they could run us off because it was their property. They couldn't run us off before that. So when they moved up the road, and we were still friends for a couple more years, when we had our little falling out, as far as I'm concerned, it was all their doings. I mean, I didn't do anything to them, nothing. I loved Burt. I mean, he was like he was my dog man father. You know what I mean? He wasn't my father. He wasn't my dad. But as far as dog man go, he was my dad, And he brought me in. He brought me up. He showed me everything. And I give him all the credit. But I mean, I had to take the bull by the horns and make it work. I mean, somebody can show you how to do stuff, but you still got to get out there and make it happen, you know. And I did. My brother and I, we made a name for ourselves. But anyway, when the split came, Burt immediately took all our dogs' names, all Matt and Skip, and erased them off all of our dogs. From Joe Testament, it should say Matt and Skip's Joe Testament. For Uncle Bud, it should say Matt and Skip's Uncle Bud. For Johnny Walker Red, it should say Matt and Skip's Johnny Walker Red. For Sorrel's Tex, it should say Matt and Skip's Tex. And that's just the males. That's stud dogs. And we had 60 head of dogs with our names on them. And not one left. None. You can't find my name on a pedigree. But if you read Sorrel's pedigrees, it all says Sorrel. But I'll tell you this, and I'll swear as my mother would raise, I could raise my mother from the dead right now and tell her the truth, that I was robbed. My name was completely expunged off the front of the Sorrel's pedigrees. When they in other words, if you go read the Sorrel's pedigree right now, from say as late as the mid 90s, mid 90s, as early as the early 80s, from the early 80s to the mid 90s, it's 50 years. He erased every dog that I had my name in front of. And when I say my name, mine and my brother's Matt and Skip. He took Matt and Skip's name off the pedigrees, and because he had sway with Ralph Greenwood, and the Greenwoods did it. But see, today, if you try to, like, say you bought a dog from me, and it said Mad's Joe Testament, and then you bought Joe Testament from me, you go and you re-register it under Eric's Joe Testament. Okay? The ADBA is bound by rule of law. I mean, they're going to call me up. They're going to call me, and they're going to verify that I sold the dog to you, and that it was a legal transaction, and that you legally own him now, and that my name is going to be taken off, and that your name is going to be replaced in mine. Unless we had an agreement that my name remains. But the ADBA will call you. They're going to call you, and they're going to call me, and they're going to make sure that it's right before they change the names. But you know what? I never got a call, ever. Never. ADBA never called me one time about any replacement of names on pedigrees from the Sorrels, from the Mad and Skip's Champion Joe Testament, Sorrels line, Mad and Skip's Uncle Bud, Mad and Skip's Johnny Walker Red, all those dogs. Wow. The ADBA never called me. And they pride themselves, even today, on their integrity. They have no integrity. But even now, I still deal with ADBA because I don't want to fight with them. I don't put that at the feet of the ADBA. I put it at the feet of Joni Sorrels and Burt Sorrels. You know, so, I mean, it's a bone to pick, buddy, and this is the biggest reason I want to tell my story, that particular reason. All the rest of the stuff that I talk about is not important to me. To me, the most important thing I want known is that at least half the pedigrees that Burt Sorrels made his name on were Mad and Skip's dogs. Okay, so here's the deal. If you buy a dog from me, say you buy Joe Testament, we'll get back to that same scenario. You buy Joe Testament from me, and you buy another girl dog, say you buy Crazy Blondie from me, and you change the name over to Eric Lawton's Joe Testament, Eric Lawton's Crazy Blondie, Mom and Daddy. After you breed those two together, those puppies are no longer Mad dogs or Mad and Skip's dogs or Sorrel's dogs. They're now Eric Lawton's dogs. And I had made 4 or 5 generation pedigree changes. In other words, I bred Joe Testament 5 or 6 times. I bred Uncle Bud 4 or 5 times. I bred Johnny Walker 5 or 6 times. I bred the Tex dog half a dozen times. I mean, at one point we're feeding over 100 head of dogs before Burt ever showed up, and our names were on every dog pedigree in there. And now, if you read a Charles pedigree, you can't find my name on any of them.
That's really crooked.
It was It was the biggest robbery that I think, because see, I put a lot of years into this thing, man, and you can't see it. Now with pedigrees, you look at Burt's pedigrees, it says pure sorrels for 40 years, and you go, my God, this guy's really been in it for a long time. He's really been a rock. He's been on his own the whole time. Bullshit. Burt, it turns out, I found out years later, he did the same thing to another brother team. There was a guy named Newt and Burt Hilliard, the Hilliard brothers, that he did the same thing to that he did to me and my brother. And he did the same thing to another guy named Frank Roca. And he did the same thing to a half a dozen other dog men that he got dogs from them and took their names off without legally doing it illegally, putting his name in front. He had a real freaking weird thing going on about his pedigrees. And if it didn't say Sorrels in front of the dog's name, it just ate him up. It drove him nuts. It was to the point to where he was actually breeding. There's a dog named Boomerang, and he was a famous dog, arguably the baddest dog that's ever lived. I mean, you could argue that he was in the top 5 baddest dogs that have ever lived in the history of American Pit Bull Terriers. He was up there with the top 5 best dogs ever. He was Boomerang, and he came from a guy named Maurice Carver, and he was purchased by a guy named Baker Davis from Orlando, Florida. Baker Davis bought a puppy named Boomerang, or a puppy from Maurice Carver. He named him Boomerang, and he brought him home. Burt had him in his pedigrees, but he couldn't show him because he knew that everybody would know if he put Boomerang in there, he couldn't put Sorrels in front of it. He had Boomerang in his pedigrees, but he hid them under other names of his own dogs. So he changed and switched pedigrees on his own pedigrees so that he could run his name in front of the dog. But it was, in reality, it was actually Boomerang blood and not the pure Sorrels, the old Sorrels line. See, Sorrels was known for a dog named Red Jerry. He was also known for the old Corvino blood, and he was also known for a dog named Bull, Sorrels Bull. The dog started out being a guy named Kohler or Kaler. Some people pronounce it Kaler, others pronounce it Kohler. He owned a dog named Bull, Kohler's Bull. And the dog was actually bred by Maurice Carver. He was sired by a dog named Zeke, which was a great producer. And Kohler got him back. I guess Maurice got him back from Kohler, and somehow Burt got him between time Kohler and Maurice Carver had him. Burt wound up with him. I'm not sure of the transaction and how it went down, but Burt wound up getting Kohler's Bull or Sorrels Bull. And that was what he was always known for, Sorrels Bull. He was known for the Red Jerry blood and the Corvino blood, and he made a great name for himself. But he also had the Boomerang dog in his pedigrees, but he could not put Boomerang in his pedigrees because he knew that Baker Davis's name was in front of Boomerang, and he could never counterfeit that because everybody would know. So therefore, instead of putting Boomerang in there, if Boomerang was really in there, but he put his own blood, his own dog's names in there instead of Boomerang, so he could put Sorrels in front of it instead of Baker Davis. If you look at his pedigrees, you go type in Sorrels anything, you go look at his pedigrees. Mostly, say, a lot of dog men, they got different people they deal with, and, they interact and they trade back and forth. And say you and I trade, maybe a couple of your friends and my friends, we all trade together. whoever we trade with, it's your dog. I'm going to leave your name on that dog. I bred to him or something like that.
Right.
But it's still going to say Eric Lawton's, bull.
Right. I would want that. I would want that in the pedigree.
Sure. Burt wanted it to look like he was you've heard the term "no man is an island." Mm. Burt wanted the facade to make it look like he was an island, that he was a self-made dog man, that no one ever helped him. He was his own dog man. He was the best dog man, and he didn't have help from anybody ever. And that's why he always had his name in front of every dog. And if he had another dog from another kennel and he couldn't put his name on it, he changed it. He would switch it. He would have the dog. The dog would actually be the one, like Boomerang was. He bred the hell out of it. He bred Boomerang a lot. So he bred into Boomerang. He had a lot of Boomerang blood in his yard. But he couldn't show it because his name wouldn't be in front of it.
So he would just breed. So he would breed Boomerang, but on paper call it a different dog.
Exactly.
I gotcha.
Yep. So that he could put his name in front of it. And if he couldn't put his name in front of it, he would breed it anyway and put one of his dogs in front of it. One that was known for his blood, like Sorrel's Bull or Sorrel's Red Jerry, because everybody knew Sorrel's Red Jerry and Sorrel's Bull were Burt's dogs. But anyway, long story short, the whole thing came down, and Burt did that paper thing, and we lost our names on all of our pedigrees.
Jeez, that is insane.
The real truth is, if you read a pedigree today, a Sorrel's pedigree, the real truth should say, and I'm not saying up till now, of course, Burt actually got out of the game 15 years before he died. He was completely done. He got away from the dogs before he died. He lived the last 15, 20 years of his life without having any dogs. But from about 1980 until about the late 90s, when he was breeding and handling and dealing with my blood, this is dogs that I had gotten from him, but they were now my dogs. And they were registered with the ADBA legally in my name. And I should say my name, my brother's name. It was Matt and Skip. He switched all of that out, and it should say now, if you look at anything from, say, the mid-90s back all the way backwards to the early 80s to even the late 79, like 78, 79, starting around that time up till about the mid-90s. Any dogs in the pedigree that are in Sorrel's name should, at least half of them, should have my name on them. Mm-hmm. I want the truth out. That is the truth. I am not making it up. And the reason I can tell you, it wasn't just me that it happened to. Me and my brother. It happened to Newt Hilliard and Burt Hilliard, and it happened to Frank Roca, and it happened to a half a dozen other dog men. Carl, and another guy named Carl Wynn. You might want to write those names down. There's Carl Wynn. There was Frank Roca. There was Burt and Newt Hilliard. Mm-hmm. There was Madden Skip Parker, and numerous other dog men that did the same thing that happened to me and my brother happened to them. He got dogs from them, he got their name off of it, and he put his name in front of it. And the ADA was complicit in it. ADBA was complicit because Ralph Greenwood and Burt were very good friends. And of course, Joni grew up in, and then that's how Joni got to know Burt, is because of the Greenwoods. That's how they wound up getting married. But there was no love in that marriage. It wasn't a love marriage. It wasn't a marriage of love like my marriage is. Mm-hmm. Married up pushing 38 years right now. And I'm as in love with my wife today as I was the day I met her. Mm-hmm. Passionately in love with her. But there was nothing like that with Burt and Joni. It was strictly a matter of business.
Now, what ended up?
It didn't last. 12, 15 years after they were married, they blew up. And it was after they split up that Burt actually started calling me up and telling me how, he was almost apologetic about it because he realized how bad she had done himself. She did him really bad. I mean, oh God, you wouldn't believe what she did to him. Oh God, it was bad, the stuff he told me about.
That's what I was just getting ready to ask you.
Well, okay. Oh my God, she was a devious female, bud. I'm telling you what. Okay, she handled the dogs. She fed and watered, did all the heavy lifting outside, ran the kennel, everything outdoors. Burt took care of all the ADBA stuff and the phone work, and Burt did all the sales. In other words, if somebody'd call up, he'd tell them the war stories about his dogs, and they'd get stars in their eyes. Next thing you know, they'd be sending him money, and he'd sell them a puppy. Mm-hmm. And Burt was very good about that. He was a salesman, an excellent salesman. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. He had great dogs. There's no question. He had, in my opinion, some of the best dogs ever bred. Mm. And that's why I've stuck with that line for so many years, because I had so much success with it. So it's not an accident. I mean, they were. Burt had if it was compared to, gardening, he had a green thumb, except it was a golden thumb regarding pit bulls. He just had he knew how to breed them. Mm. And Joni never had that gift, but Burt had it. Nevertheless, long story short, the marriage is getting in deep. They're probably 12 years into being married. Mad and Skip are long gone. We've been run off. We're no longer, associated with Sorrels anymore. We're on our own, doing our own thing. We've got our own dogs. I'm still running the old Sorrels line. Go back to my old friends, getting some dogs back here and there, get this and that. When Burt ran us off, we had to go find our own blood that had gone out elsewhere. And so anyway, we got all our old stuff back, most of it. And in the meantime, Burt and Joni were getting bigger and bigger into the ADBA show circuit, what was the confirmation shows. Okay, that's ADBA's biggest thing is they make a lot of money on these shows throughout the nation. And, from say Texas to Oklahoma to California to Florida to Alabama to New York. I mean, all over the United States, there's people that have American Pit Bull Terriers that do what we call confirmation shows. It's a confirmation show. It's you bring your dog in with your puppies. You got different categories. You got puppies. You got 1 year old. You got 6 month olds. 1 year olds. You got year and a half old. Then you got the 2 years, and then you got the adult dogs and males and female classes and all that. And there's a judge there, a certified judge by the ADBA. The judge comes in there, he judges and tells, okay, this is the best dog here just because he's the prettiest, So it's a compliment. It's not because of anything on performance. It's strictly on how well built the dog is and how well developed he is and how pretty he is. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, Burt and Joni were getting real heavy into that. And they were being asked to go all over the nation, all expense paid, and get excellent X amount of dollars up front for going there and being a judge. And so Burt was invited in New Zealand. I mean, you can imagine New Zealand. I mean, that's the very bottom of the earth. Mm-hmm. And so they recruited Burt to come over to New Zealand for 3 weeks. And they were going to do this big ADBA confirmation show. And Burt was going to be the judge, and he was going to be there, and they were going to entertain him for 3 full weeks. It was all in New Zealand. Wow. And so Burt goes, okay, I'll do it, but you got to pay me X amount of big bucks. I mean, I'm sure they paid him close to $4,000 or $5,000 just to come. And then I know they paid him a lot of money for doing for being the judge. So, I mean, all total, he probably made $5,000 or $6,000 off that deal. Mm. And that was in the late 90s. Yeah, late 90s. early 2000s. And Joni had at this point enough. She was done. Burt had been what I'd say kind of physical with her, and I won't go any deeper because I don't know. I didn't see it, so I don't want to. They were verbally abusive with each other, and they weren't happy. And so Joni had enough. And so what Joni had started doing is she'd go take the money to the bank and deposit it. And she was doing a lot of the paperwork at this point. Burt was bowing out. He was chilling out. All Burt wanted to do was play golf. So Joni was pretty much taking over the whole dog part of the business. And she continued to, be the bookkeeper, the depositor, doing all the work. And she would, every time she'd go to the bank, she'd sock a little bit away for herself. Mm-hmm. On the side, and Burt never even knew she had a separate account, and she just sat on it for years. And every time they sell a dog or this X amount of money, she'd put the balance of the money would go into the main account, and then a little piece of it would go into her account. And then when Burt got invited to go to New Zealand, Joni saw her chance. She had taken that money; it had built up by now. She found 20 acres up the road, right up the road. I mean, not far. As far as they were from me when they first moved, she was from Burt.
Wow.
So it wasn't just a moment up the road, same highway. It was a north-south highway. Anyway, she went up and she bought a little 20 acre, whatever it was. And I think it had a house on it or a trailer or something anyway. She bought it. She bought it straight up, and she had been paying for it all along. And when Burt made his trip to New Zealand, booyah, buddy, she got the truck, backed it up, started loading dogs. She loaded almost the whole freaking yard of dogs in that truck, and that probably made 20 trips back and forth. And when Burt got home, there was nothing there. There was a few dogs left on a chain, some puppies in the pen, miscellaneous this and that, and the house was a wreck. She ransacked it, bud, and she hauled ass, and Burt couldn't do a damn thing. It was the exact same thing she did to Burt that Burt and Joni had done to me and my brother years before.
Right. Wow.
Exactly the same thing. And you can tell this story, and I'll back it up until the day I die. And Burt, now the reason I know this story, because after Joni split with Burt, Burt began to call me back because he knew I was his friend. I had never hated Burt. I loved Burt. It was like I said, he was like my dad in the dog game.
Yeah.
And I would have done anything for Burt. And to this day, I mean, I never had an anger or hate towards Burt. I understood Burt. He was a con artist. He was a shyster. He was everything that shouldn't be. But you know what else he was? He was probably the best dog man I ever met. He knew dogs. He knew dogs inside and out. He was great. But his personality was awful. He was a angry, hateful, mean-spirited, not nice guy. He wasn't straight and honest. He would cheat you. He would rob you. He was a bad guy. But just because he was a bad guy didn't make me hate him. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you get into this game, this dog business, you're getting in the game with a bunch of gangsters and pirates and thieves and muggers and robbers, and that's what you're doing. You're getting with there's very what you call lewd and lascivious
dark elements.
Very dark elements. Great explanation of the type of people that are in this business.
Yeah.
They're weird people. But anyway, long story short, our names got taken. Mine and my brother's name got taken off the Sorrells Pedigree. If you were to read a true Sorrells Pedigree today, you'd see Mad and Skip on everything from the early 80s all the way to the mid 90s. Mad and Skip's Champion Uncle Bud, Mad and Skip's Johnny Walker Red, Mad and Skip's Tex, not Sorrells Tex, Mad and Skip's Tex, came straight from Maurice Carver. the list goes on. I mean, I could keep on and on and on how many dogs were switched out of our names. Cameo, this little Gyp, the very first little girl dog I ever bought from Burt. I named her Cameo. She was a dear, sweet little thing. He changed her name, put his name in front of her. It was my bitch. I bought her. I mean, just dozens of dogs like that. It was heartbreaking, man, when he did that. But I buried it. But I'm glad to tell the story. I'm glad that I can tell it without fear of retribution.
Yeah.
Here's the truth. Joni knows the truth. She's still alive. I don't know how, happily. I don't think she's a very happy person. I tried to be friends. I buried the hatchet with Joni 2 years ago, and she just figured out a way to not like me anymore. Now,
didn't she make some major changes to the dogs as well?
Oh yeah. I heard she's not breeding Sorrel's line anymore at all. They're not even close to the old Sorrel's line. She's a lot like Burt. If she don't have her name in front of the dog, she don't want to have it. So she just switched up and started breeding to other bloodlines. And she's really in that Gary Hammond's guy, which Gary Hammond's, he wouldn't make a pimple on the worst dog man I ever met's ass. Gary Hammond's is he's a puppy peddler. Hey, don't get me wrong. Gary Hammond's has had his hands on some of the best dog blood that's ever lived, because he got his start with, the Mayfield line, the Don Mayfield stuff. Don Mayfield was one of the great dog men that ever lived. And a lot of his dogs wound up with Gary Hammond's. But she got dogs from Hammond. She got dogs from the Coy's banjo blood. And I don't know where all she's gotten dogs from, but she's introduced those lines of dogs into her old Sorrel's line, and they don't even resemble the old Sorrel's. Again, Sorrel's dogs had a particular look. You could look at them and say, well, it's like a Sorrel's dog. And he turns out and look at the pedigree and says, yeah, well, it is. Because, it lines up. You look at the picture and go, wow, that looks like a Sorrel's bloodline. And go back and check it out and find out, yeah, it is a Sorrel's. It's not pure, but it's got a lot of Sorrel's in it. It's like, yeah, okay. It made sense because I could look at it and tell. And that was the way it used to be, but not with Joni's dog, not anymore. She's gone off. She's not breeding Sorrel's line anymore. Of course, I'm not even breeding Sorrel's lines. I'm breeding my line. I'm breeding my line of dogs, but the foundation of my line is still Sorrel's. Whereas, and hers are too, but she's deviated so radically that they don't have that look anymore.
Right.
But she's made, done what she's done.
What else did you add to the mix for your dogs?
Well, the only other dogs I've wanted to breed into were like Wood Snooty. That's a very good line, but it lines up just perfectly with Burt's blood, because it's Wood Snooty is out of a bitch named Arts Missy, who happens to be a littermate sister to Baker Davis's Boomerang, the dog I was telling you about that Burt had in his pedigrees, but he would never show it. The Boomerang blood. He had Boomerang in there, but he couldn't show it because he had to put Baker Davis's name in front of it. So instead of doing that, he put his dog, Shoshone or Hard Eyes or Raisin or something like that in front of it. Anyway, I got handwritten pedigrees from Burt. Says Davis's Scratch and Davis's Grasshopper. Baker Davis was being the guy that owned Boomerang. He had two dogs named Davis's Scratch and Davis's Grasshopper. They were both type bred Boomerang dogs. And Burt got a couple of dogs from that line, Scratch and Grasshopper. Davis's Scratch and Davis's Grasshopper. He got some dogs out of that particular mama and daddy, and he switched it. He never showed Davis's Scratch and Davis's Grasshopper. He showed whatever he wanted to show, Raisin or Hard Eyes or Bandit or Johnny Walker Red or Joe Testament or Uncle Bud. He couldn't put Baker Davis's name in there, because then it would have shown that he was collaborating with Baker Davis. He didn't want to give anybody credit for what he felt like was his. And it's the same thing with my blood. My blood was my blood, even though it came from his line. And then he changed the names and got his name back over the top of mine. That's what it would have. I would have been fine if he would just left my name on it and put his name in front of it. That would have been okay too. I wouldn't have had no problem with it. But he completely erased our names off of it. That's what really bothered me. It should say Charles and Skip and Sarles or something.
It's just kind of an asshole move.
Yeah, he's just hateful. He was just a hateful guy that way. But after they split up, he called me. He called me up. And we got to talking. I ended up buying another dog from him years later. Mm-hmm. I bought a dog from Burt. It was my old Uncle Blood. It was my blood. It was my stuff. I bought a dog from him. And that dog wound up being one of the best catch dogs I ever owned. I mean, I was strictly into the survival and wilderness training, wilderness hunting, and using the pit bulls, American pit bull terriers. The thing that makes them superior for not hogs, and I'd say the better dogs for the hogs would be the ones that Lee Robinson's breeding, because they're big. Mm-hmm. And it is helpful to have a big dog on a hog, because those hogs, even a big dog, get killed. But for the survival type of thing that I was doing, honestly, the smaller dogs are better. They're superior because there's holes. There's places that a big dog can't go. In the woods, in the wilderness. There's dens, and there's like a coyote den. They're tiny. You think they're real big. They're not. Mm-hmm. They're small. I think, how in the hell would a coyote get in there? Well, you don't realize until you get up on a coyote. They're very small dogs. Coyotes are tiny. Mm-hmm. And they get in the smallest little holes you ever imagine, and they dig them out, So a small pit bull or an average size pit bull, say 38 or 40 pound dog, better suited to run into the field and get into what I would call varmint hunting, varmint, not the hogs, but they gang up on the hogs and have a good advantage too,
Now, if you had more than one pit bull, they would get along to go after a hog?
Only male and female together. Only male, female together.
Okay.
Yep. Never two males run together. You can't do it. I never could. Mm-hmm. I never tried. I never even wanted to, because I knew the end result would be they're going to end up fighting. Maybe not in the early going, in the start, but eventually they're going to go to fighting, because what happens is when they get in there, and they go to fighting, it's after they've been broke up. Like say they're on something. They're on an armadillo, or they're on a raccoon. Mm-hmm. And they're jointly, two males are jointly together, breaking this dog down, or this raccoon, or this coyote, or whatever they're on. When you start to break them up from getting the coyote or the raccoon, that's when they're going to go on each other, because they're not done. You know what I mean? They're not finished.
Yeah. And that was like an appetizer.
Yeah, they get fired up. They get excited, and it's hard to chill them out. Mm. So, yeah. Anyway. So
a male and a female, you've taken them to a hog before?
Absolutely, especially those that run together a lot. Male, female. You get a male, female, maybe even that you bred together. And if you've bred them together, they're more likely to run with each other without problems. Mm. Yeah, you can almost always run them together without problems, them getting into, a fisticuff afterwards, after you broke them off. And then they start, that's my raccoon, and the other one says, no, it's my raccoon. Next thing you know, they're going after each other. Mm. And so, you don't want that, because you don't want each other. You don't want them to hurt each other. Mm. So, I always ran male, female teams together, and I'd train them together. When puppies, you let them raise, like say they might be half brother or sister, or maybe they might not even, they're related, but in a distant way. One puppy out of one litter, another puppy out of another litter, pick those two, run them together, keep them together all the time, discourage them from doing things that you don't like. In other words, the way I train my dogs is I discourage the behavior I don't like, and I encourage the behavior I do like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. That's all I do. I encourage the behavior I like and discourage the behavior I don't like. And if I'm with them and I see them, pushing each other's buttons like little kids do, I just discourage it right away. Just stop it. Nip it in the bud right now. Stop that. Take a stick and raise it up and act like I'm not going to, hit them with it or anything. But, you let them know, hey, that's not tolerate that. Stop. And they chill out, and because they're occupied with trying to catch something together, and they go right back. It doesn't take them but a minute. They go, oh yeah, they go right back. They go right back to hunting, checking, trying to look in every hole, not missing everything. At the root of at the root level of a big monster oak tree, there's almost always a hole or two. And it'll be a rat hole, it might be a rabbit hole, it might be an armadillo hole, it might be a raccoon hole. It just never no. You don't know. And the dogs get a scent and realize it's fresh. Man, they'll open up that whole tree. They'll dig. I've seen them dig for hours in one spot, a half a day. Literally, I've seen them dig up a whole oak tree. The oak tree laid over. I mean, all day they dug. They saw the rat go in the hole. It was at the base of a big oak tree. I left for work. I was headed to work, and the dogs are on my property. This is my land. And there's a big oak tree, and there was a rat that ran down the hole. I saw the rat would go, and the dog saw it too, and they both were there. And I said, oh, got something to keep you busy till I get home. And I went to work, came back. It was an early day for me. It was probably about noon time. And they were down in that hole. They were under the tree. They had dug it all the way up where the hole was so opened up that they were down up under the tree. And they dug and dug and dug, and they came out with that rat. And the next day, the tree fell over because it didn't have any root left. They dug a tree. They literally dug a tree. They laid over because they dug the roots out. I mean, but anyway, that's kind of hunting I like doing. Small game. And it's safe too. You don't have to worry about the dog getting killed because the hog, you 1 minute you got a dog, next minute he's dead. I mean, it's so quick. Those hogs will kill you so fast. I mean, instantaneously. I mean, you might run along there for 6, 8 months, a year, a couple of years, running the same dog, and he's getting all these hogs, and then all of a sudden you go one day in the woods and you let him go on a hog, and next thing you know, a minute later, he's dead. I mean, there's no coming back from that. He is totally, completely dead. It's like, wow, I lost my best dog. He's dead, and it's heartbreaking. So I kind of drifted away from the hogs later on because I didn't want to lose any dogs as a result. And it kind of tied in with the survival thing because survival's for about, what's there right now immediately. You don't have to go far. There's rats in the hole. There's rabbits in the holes. There's raccoons. There's squirrels. There's a lot of wild game in those holes. And the dogs are keen to get in there and get them. So it's a lot of fun doing that. A lot of fun.
Right.
And it teaches the person that you're teaching how to live off the land to watch the dog. I'd say, you want to learn how to survive, watch the dog. Follow the dog. He'll take you right where the wild games are, where all the food, all the meat is. He'll take you there. If you just watch the dog, he'll take you there. And so,
can you eat pretty much anything out there?
Oh, yeah. If it's got fur on it, you can eat it. Sure. Absolutely. There's nothing it's not edible. Wild game, from rats, squirrels, raccoons to armadillos, everything. I've eaten everything there is to eat. Turtles, God, I mean everything.
Okay.
There's nothing I haven't.
I've always wondered that as far as survival. Like, I know there's certain plants you got to stay away from.
Well, mostly, be surprised how many plants you can eat. There's not that many poison plants out there.
Right.
So it's not like there's a big, risk factor. Anyway.
Let me ask you this one question.
Yeah.
The general public believes that, and I believe for the most part, that a game bred dog, whether it's been like, well, we're just talking about, say, a puppy, can that dog be raised to coexist with other animals?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I've always heard the thing like, if it's born a pit bull, that's it. It's going to be a pit bull when it gets older.
That's not true. I tell you, here's the scenario that you want. If you want to buy a pit bull and you want to associate him, you want him to be social, what we call social. In other words, he's got good social skills. Is bring a baby, say 6 weeks to 8 weeks old, maybe up to 3 months, old, into a home that has a cat, a chihuahua, and a German Shepherd. And that's not that many dogs for a lot of people. That's just nothing. A lot of people have 8 to 10 dogs in the house, I'm talking about, like you got a German Shepherd, you got a Chihuahua, and you got a Cocker Spaniel, 3 dogs, and a cat. Bring your pit bull puppy in there, and I guarantee you he will be socialized with all those dogs, and he'll never fight them. If they're older than him, when he comes up, he might take over the status of alpha male in the day when he grows up. And the other dogs will acquiesce to that status. That's fine. But he won't fight them. He won't beat them up. He won't try and kill them. He'll leave them be. Especially if they were there and senior to him when he came there. He'll be totally fine. That's the truth. You can raise pit bulls in any kind of environment.